It used to be that MAGA was whatever Donald Trump said it was and stood for whatever Donald Trump said it stood for. That's no longer the case. MAGA has become a fractious alliance, now knocking lumps out of each other in a way that the far left usually knocks lumps out of each other. MAGA's doing the same.
Andrew Neil, good morning.
Good morning to you both.
That sounds very jaunty, Andrew. Lovely to speak to you today. It's 2 days until the budget. Exciting times. More leaks. The Times this morning reports plans to tax people who own expensive homes. We spoke to the business secretary, Peter Kyle. He defended the government after several listeners texted in and accused him of gaslighting when he wasn't willing to discuss budget leaks.
I am speaking in all sincerity. I am somebody who came into public life to deliver for people, to deliver opportunities for young people so they can thrive throughout life. Of course, it's frustrating for me as it is for you that I have to sort of have speculation that's put to me that's written sometimes in good faith, sometimes in bad faith. But it is incredibly difficult for me to be put in the position where I'm put all this sort of different bits of speculation that it would be irresponsible for me to engage in. So I urge you, focus on the budget and then challenge people like me on the facts.
That was Peter Kyle, the business secretary. We also heard from the property expert Kirsty Alsop. She told us her views on the idea of a tax on £2 million plus homes.
We've had so many kites. As one commentator said, the sun's almost been blacked out by Rachel Reeves' kites. But this is very, very close. The budget's on Wednesday, and I suspect this is something that will go ahead and happen. There are going to be a lot more properties on the market valued at 1.9999 million. Because if you have these cliff edges, people will avoid them. And the OBR has said they believe there will be alterations in behaviour, bunching up. And yes, it will affect the market. But the market is already desperately in the doldrums because all this budget speculation and this late budget has caused real, genuine damage.
That's Kirsty Alsop there. We also looked this morning at how close we are to peace in Ukraine. The American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says there's been tremendous progress, but there now seems to be two competing peace plans on the table. One written by Russia with a bit of America, the other written in response by Europeans trying to protect Ukraine.
Well, Ben Hodges is a former commanding general of the US Army in Europe. He thought European politicians needed to look at their own actions as well as criticising America.
Well, you know what? I have to say, I'm a little sick and tired of listening to Europeans whinge about, the Americans this and the Americans that. I mean, the collective economies, wealth, industry, technology, and populations of Europe dwarfs Russia. And, you should have never rolled over for Trump on the tariffs. And now, you just keep rolling downhill. So at some point, Europeans are going to have to either stop whining about it, because you're going to live with the consequences of this terrible deal. Security, millions more Ukrainian refugees. There are no good outcomes for Europe if it goes through as is.
Yeah, very clear words there from Ben Hodges. In the next half hour, Andrew will tell us whether he likes the look of Rachel Reeves' smorgasbord, if he's hopeful for peace, what's gone wrong in his beloved Glasgow, and what his budget-approved snacks are going to be for when he presents the show with Joe Coburn on Wednesday afternoon.
Well, let's get going with the budget, shall we? Because, Andrew, there have been lots of stories over the weekend and in the Times today about what Rachel Reeves intends to do. And when we look at them in the round and we look at some of the things, and we have to say this, we don't know the full extent of the budget yet, so we can't see the complete picture. But we do know, for example, that benefits are going to rise, that we think that Rachel Reeves is going to remove the two-child benefit cap, pensions are going to increase. We know that it's likely that all of us will pay more in taxes because the thresholds will be frozen. When you look across the things that we've heard about so far, do you think she's getting the balance right?
Well, we don't know yet, because it was good of Kirsty Alsop too. I was the one that said there was so many kites flying that the sun had been blotted out. And we don't know what these kite flying is by definition. What do you think about this? And of course, the biggest kite that was flown of all was an increase in income tax. And then when she saw the reaction to that, she quickly brought that kite back down to land again. I mean, I think the biggest, first of all, she's probably still got a raise between 25 and 35 billion because she's got a big black hole of her own making to fill. She's now got extra spending in welfare, the child benefits, and so on. And of course, she's got the 5 billion that she lost over the failed welfare reform. So there's a ton of money to raise. may not be as much as some have said, but it's still a lot. She's counted out the big taxes to rise, like income tax, which of course would be the simplest way of doing it, though it would mean breaking the manifesto pledge. And so my biggest fear, and the thing we'll be looking out for on Wednesday, is the smorgasbord. Is that just a Swedish word for omnishambles?
Well, I mean, and I suppose, the problem with, as you say, floating income tax rises and then moving away from that when you see the reaction and having to look to all of these smaller increases is the picture becomes blurred. And one of the really important things for governments, especially governments which are, let's be frank, not doing very well in the polls and having problems with their own backbenchers, is to tell a coherent story. I mean, do you think that Rachel Reeves is going to be able to achieve that?
No, there isn't a coherent story. I mean, the harsh truth is that if she hadn't had a budget last October 2024, the economy would be in far better shape today. The economy was dragged down by that budget. It got an initial boost because borrowing and tax and spending was increased by 70 billion. That's the reason why the economy grew in the earlier part of this year. But like all that pump priming, it soon petered out. And from quarter one, which was quite strong, it then declined, then reduced growth in quarter two, and basically came to a shuddering halt in quarter three, and will probably be stagnant in quarter four because everybody, because of the kite flying, no one has been investing, no one has been hiring, and consumers have not been spending. Retail sales have actually fallen in the past month. So she's faced with a stagnant economy of her own making. And I think the problem, and this is what the gilt markets, the bond markets will be looking very closely. Every small tax you make, rise that you make, has two features of it. One, it doesn't raise very much money. Two, you annoy some powerful vested interest. And they will campaign like mad to get it changed. I just refer you to 2012, George Osborne's pasty tax. I mean, it raised peanuts and it haunted him. That's where the original omnishambles budget comes from. Or, if that memory is too long for you, I refer you back to this government's change in inheritance tax rules for farmers. Set the whole farming community against it. And what did it raise? £500 million, not even a rounding error. And the great danger is that a lot of the tax rises she's going to announce will actually be a struggle to get through because these powerful interests will push back, and they may not even raise the money the Treasury says it would do. And if the gilt markets see that, I can assure you that we're going to start seeing a bond yield spike again.
And, many of these measures as well are sort of backloaded. They're not happening straight away.
That's exactly right. Take the mansion tax. There's a strong case for a major reform of property taxes in the country. I have paid property taxes in substantial properties in 3 territories, in Britain, in America, and in France. The most substantial property of all was in Britain, and yet that was the one I paid the least property tax on. In France and in America, the property taxes are far higher than they are in Britain. And if you add into that the fact that in the past 15 years, if you had assets, if you had some wealth to begin with, you have done very well, far better than anybody in a wage has done, where wages have largely been stagnant. So the case for upping taxes on higher value properties, I think, is rather strong. The problem is that it takes a long while to implement. Can you imagine the argy-bargy that will be over how much your house is worth before it's taxed? And in the end, it doesn't bring in that much. I saw that they were talking about another 500 million again. Not even a rounding error.
And it's as you say, it's not a substantial amount of money. Andrew, can I ask you a sort of indelicate question, if you like, which is that in every single interview Rachel Reeves has done so far ahead of the budget, she seems to be nodding towards this idea that she feels under siege by the opinions of men, often, very sort of men with sort of a large following or a large kind of presence.
Those boys who now write newspaper columns, she said in the Times.
And she says that she's being mansplained to about her budget. What do you say to that?
It's complete nonsense. We've got Rachel from accounts. That's what we do in Britain. What happened to Spreadsheet Phil? Remember him? I don't think he was a woman, Mr. Hammond, or Boy George Osborne. I mean, that's what we do in Britain. We have a disputatious, tough commentariat. She was the one that made such a big deal that she was the first ever female chancellor. There's nothing to do with mansplaining. She's getting a lot of criticism across the political spectrum because of her own incompetence. She's the one that is trying to, she said she inherited a black hole. She did partly, wasn't as big as she said it was, but there was not a great inheritance from the Tories. She's now created an even bigger black hole entirely of her own making. So why would we hold back because she's a woman? I mean, I like to treat both genders entirely equally.
Are you surprised she's going down this route of identity politics?
No, because she's desperate.
Yeah.
And it's in the end, it's a fallback position. If you've got nothing else to argue, we won't be judging her budget on Wednesday on whether she's a woman or not. That's entirely irrelevant. We'll be judging it on whether she can control inflation, stop this desperate rise in unemployment that is taking place and not had nearly enough coverage on it, and get some growth back into the economy. Remember, the original mission statement of this government when it was in opposition was growth, 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 growth. We haven't got growth. What will this budget do to give us the growth? Because if we could get growth, so many problems disappear.
Well, that's the case, and not getting growth, so many problems multiply is what the government has absolutely discovered over the last 18 months or so. Let's talk about Ukraine, Andrew. I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this, because on the face of it, certainly to an outside non-expert observer like me, there looks like a stitch-up is in play here. That the Russians have given repeated what they've said all along: this is what we want out of our war in Ukraine. Trump does not regard Russia as morally culpable, so doesn't feel there needs to be any compensation, any weighing of the scales in terms of who gets what. And it looks like whatever Rubio is saying now, the starting position is going to be one that benefits Russia more than it benefits Ukraine. Is that inevitable now, do you think, Andrew?
I don't think it's inevitable, but it's the trajectory we're currently on, unless the Europeans get their act together and stop it, or take over and take the driving seat themselves without America, if that's what it takes. We need to stop talking about this as a peace deal. It's a capitulation made in the Kremlin. It's as simple as that. It's a surrender made in the Kremlin. We now know, and there's no doubt about this, these 28 points were drawn up by the Russians. We know that from putting AI over the translation, not all of which it got right, because AI doesn't get everything right these days. And that's what Trump's endorsed. Trump has no interest in the just peace deal in the Ukraine at all. He just wants out. And I think, and of course, yes, Marco Rubio, he's not quite as MAGA as Trump or J.D. Vance. He's trying to hold the line. But frankly, he's the weakest of the three in that administration. And I think you have to see this through the lens of what's happening in domestic politics. It used to be that MAGA was whatever Donald Trump said it was and stood for whatever Donald Trump said it stood for. That's no longer the case. MAGA has become a fractious alliance, now knocking lumps out of each other in a way that the far left usually knocks lumps out of each other. MAGA's doing the same. And MAGA does not like foreign involvements. You know, you've seen this resignation of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that was over ostensibly the Epstein files that she wanted published. But that wasn't the real reason. That wasn't the fundamental reason. In her statement, she said, all this government seems to do, referring to the Trump administration, is we give money to foreign countries. And we support foreign countries. That's the MAGA mood. That's why he wants out of Ukraine. That's why we're in a precarious situation. And by the way, if any semblance of this deal happens, Ukraine's over, because it gives the Donbass to Russia, something it has not been able to capture in 4 years in its entirety. And it limits Ukraine to a much reduced army. Putin will just bide his time, rebuild his war machine, and at some time in the next 4, 5, 6 years, he will move to take the rest of Ukraine. Europe, which a while back was showing signs of strength, has recently gone back to its usual useless default position, and it needs to step up to the crease and take control of this.
Meanwhile, of course, if it does happen, as you say, Russia gets in the G8, it gets rewarded for its aggression.
Well, that's absurd. The G7 is an alliance, a group of the world's 7 biggest market economies. I'll let you into something that's not exactly a state secret. Russia is not a market economy. It's not a democracy. So why on earth? I mean, if Europe allows Trump to bring Russia back into the G8, which will be the precursor of having Trump Towers built on the Black Sea and Crimea and all the rest of it, then it's finished. There is no way that Russia, as controlled by the people who currently run the Kremlin, should be allowed anywhere near the G7. It's a dictatorship, it's a warmonger, and it's not a market economy. All of the above disqualifies it from the most powerful economic club in the world.
But Trump thinks it's powerful. Trump thinks Putin's powerful.
Sure.
Trump thinks.
Look, Trump has won.
Yeah.
Are the Europeans just going to roll over?
Well, they have done for the last year, Andrew.
That's my point.
Yeah.
But there comes a time when they rolled over throughout the 1930s, till some of us finally got our act together.
Yeah, no, we'll see what happens. It's a really precarious. I think precarious is exactly the word to see what happens over the next week.
Right.
And we'll see. I'm not sure you can trust anything that comes out of what Rubio says about it either. So we'll have to see when the actual terms are released and what Zelensky says. We'll see how good or bad it is.
Since we last spoke to him, Andrew has made headlines by describing Glasgow's main street as a national scandal. Andrew, what's going on here? Because I think a lot of people have always criticised Glasgow for being a bit grim, but it seems like maybe things are getting worse.
Well, for a long while they were getting better. In the post-war world, Glasgow went into a period of serious decline because of the decline of heavy industry and what had made Glasgow a wealthy city in the 19th century, the second city of the empire, as it was called. And then that decline started to reverse in the late 70s, early 80s. And for 20, 30, maybe more years, Glasgow was on the way up again. And you could see a marvelous revolution taking place as it repositioned itself for the 21st century. That's all in reverse now, I'm afraid, that the city is once again in deep decline. And Sauchiehall Street, which is was the main thoroughfare in Glasgow, hasn't been for a long time now, but Sauchiehall Street is the kind of poster child for that decline. They've been trying to improve it for years and years. Nothing seems to happen very quickly. It's basically a building site at the moment. You can only drive down part of it. The attempts to pedestrianize it are passing slow. And it's a kind of symbol of urban decay and of Glasgow's growing plight. And it's a tragedy to see, after all the great work that was put into reversing Glasgow's decline up until about 20 years ago.
And how's it got to that point? Is it lack of, or a kind of stalling of investment from the local authority because of the same problem that all councils have? What's gone wrong?
I mean, councils are always short of money, but it's not. The council's useless. That's the bottom line. They couldn't run the proverbial party in the brewery, and they take forever to change to do anything. I mean, the Glasgow School of Art, which burned down twice, I think, in the past 10 or 15 years. One of the most iconic buildings in Europe is now just a slum. There are other buildings in Sauchiehall Street that are a slum. The area around Central Station is just a slum. And I was struck, someone who went to university. I don't come from Glasgow, but I went to university there, and I'm very proud of the city, particularly proud of my old university. I thought I'd get a bit of a kicking because, the outsider comes in. He slags us off and then he goes away again. 99%, take the article that the Times published following up my remarks, 99% of the comments were supportive. Even in the Glasgow Herald, 99% of the comments were supportive when they picked up the story from the Times. And I think it's a wider problem than just Glasgow. I think if levelling up was to have worked under the last Conservative government or in this government, so many of our what we call provincial towns, our Bradfords, our Wigans, Prestons, Rochdales, and so on, we needed to do something to revive the centres again, to get life into the centre. Not in the old way with all the big department stores and it's where everyone did their shopping. No, that's the shopping malls have taken over that. I understand that. It's probably a better way of doing it. But you can revive city centres. There's enough wonderful Victorian architecture still around to be spruced up and reinvented again. And unlike the 60s and 70s, modern British architecture is now world class. So we can add in new buildings and we can give new life in different ways. I mean, here's an example. I know it's easier to do in London, but if you want to see an old street revived and now more vibrant than ever, go to Marylebone High Street. Because it's just and it's all sorts of little shops and no chains. And it's great fun and cafes and places to go and little shops to shop in and so on.
But Andrew, there's a lot of money there.
Revived like that.
But there's a lot of money there, isn't there? I mean, Bradford is a really good example. I drive through Bradford reasonably frequently, and there are a lot of big projects there, big kind of lottery-funded theatre renovation and of some of these big buildings. But the centre of Bradford is still boarded up shops. It's completely empty retail. And there's nothing that's being done, or not very much, that you can see.
And I remember when Boris Johnson first got the idea of levelling up, which is, by the way, only a different name for regional policy, which I'd been studying since I was at the University of Glasgow, which was a great centre of regional policy studies. I remember saying to the then Prime Minister, you have to, people won't believe it until they see a visible difference. And still, until they see that their town centres are on the way up again, that they're vibrant once more, that they're nice places to go, not to do the same things that you did 50, 60 or 40 years ago, but they still have a purpose. There's a place where people like to congregate and give a sense of vibrancy and dynamism and growth, and it will grow out from there. I mean, that's happened in Manchester. I mean, Manchester really has a vibrant city centre now. And even the centre of Birmingham these days isn't too bad. Centre of Leeds is pretty good too. And so it shows that the fate of Glasgow is not inevitable, but you do need to give these towns and cities a new pride, a new purpose. And I don't think it's shortage of money. There is a lot of money around to do this. The money is often misused, and there's a lack of vision and a lack of strategic direction.
I think working out what the purpose of a city centre is a really interesting question anyway these days. Pauline says, I'm a very proud Glaswegian living in York. I agree totally with Andrew Neil. On home visits, I'm ashamed and sad.
It's sad. I was saddened. There's no joy in this at all. Glasgow is such a great, and it still has such great assets. Yeah. The university itself has just gone through £1 billion expansion. £1 billion in a university. Only Imperial College can beat that in modern times. Yeah. And that's partly because land values in London are so high. Yeah. So, there's a willingness to invest if you provide the right environment. But if you don't, nobody has to go to Glasgow.
No, that's a good point. Now, we're going to finish on food and drink, Andrew. Most important news of the day is the return of the cosmopolitan cocktail, popularised by Sex and the City. I have you down as more of a Sex on the Beach type character, Andrew. Are you a cocktail man? Have you ever drunk a cosmopolitan?
I'm not sure Sex on the Beach is legal, but we'll leave it there. It's going to be very uncomfortable in the grains of sand.
Oh, goodness me, you two.
No, it's just an observation.
That was the safest. I had several options in my mind.
They get in your fingernails and so on.
I had several options in my mind, Andrew.
What conclusion Kate suddenly jumped to there.
No, disgraceful.
Strange one. I have had that cocktail you mentioned, whose name already escapes me, the Cosmopolitan.
Yes.
Because I'm I'm a very good friend of Candace Bushnell. And she wrote Sex and the City. So when you see Candace, naturally you have to have a cosmopolitan. But as both of you will know, and your listeners will appreciate, being something of a supermodel myself, I probably tend more towards the skinny bitch.
The skinny bitch? Is that a cocktail?
Yeah, it's don't you know steak, a skinny bitch?
No, I've never heard of skinny bitch.
I think you should have.
Should we stop saying skinny bitch?
I think we should stop saying the B word. What's in it?
Have a skinny bitch on the beach. It's that works quite well. Skinny bitch on the beach. It's vodka and sparkling water.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. Fizzy vodka.
Low in calories, because we supermodels have to, as they say in France, je regarde ma ligne. I look after my figure.
I bet you do. Did she base Sarah Jessica Parker's newspaper writing character on you? Do you think, Andrew?
No, but she based Mr. Big on one of my best friends.
Did she?
Who's from the United Kingdom. She used to date him, in fact.
Oh, wow. Okay, there's a lot going on there. I think we should get you back to unpack that. I would love to have that conversation with you. Are you bringing any snacks to the party with Joe Coburn, Andrew?
Like Joko, I basically exist on coffee during these events. And so that's where I'll be hoping for a regular supply. I hope my producers listening now, a regular supply of coffee. But if I need a little substance, I find a banana does the job.
A banana, good. I can't tell you how excited people are to have you both on the show.
We're really looking for it. It's going to be a great day. Not necessarily a great day for the country or for people's wallets, but a great day to be covering this on Times Radio.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you, Andrew. We're looking forward to listening to you both on Wednesday. Thanks for joining us as ever today.
Thank you.